Did you know some people are surrounded by hundreds of acquaintances yet still feel completely alone? And there are others who have barely anyone in their life, and there's a reason for it. What you're about to hear could explain why some empaths walk through life with few or no friends. It's not because they're unfriendly or unlikable. In fact, it's often the exact opposite. There's something inside them, a combination of empathy, sensitivity, and emotional depth that shapes who they allow into their world. And if you're an empath, understanding this could change the way you see yourself and your relationships. If you recognize any of these traits in yourself, I want you to hit that like button, share this video, and stick around, because the next points will not only explain the why, but also how empaths can embrace their nature while still building meaningful connections. Imagine walking into a room and instantly feeling the weight of everyone's emotions, even before a word is spoken. That's what life is like for an empath. They don't just notice feelings, they absorb them. Happiness, sadness, anxiety, anger, it all seeps in, almost as if it were their own. While this makes them incredibly compassionate and deeply understanding, it also comes with a hidden burden. Carrying the emotions of others can be exhausting, leaving them drained and emotionally overloaded, even if nothing in their own life is troubling them. Because of this, empaths often pull back from large social circles or casual friendships. They need space to process and reset. It's not that they don't want friends, it's that being around too many people, especially emotionally intense or negative personalities, can feel like a storm they cannot escape. Over time, this hyperabsorption can create patterns of avoidance. They may decline invitations, skip social events, or keep conversations short, not out of rudeness, but out of self-preservation. The world doesn't always understand this. Friends or acquaintances might mistake it for aloofness or disinterest, never realizing that the empath is quietly carrying an invisible emotional load. This ability to feel deeply is both a gift and a challenge. It makes empaths attuned, sensitive, and profoundly human, but it also limits their social bandwidth. The more they give their emotional energy to others, the less they have for themselves, naturally narrowing the circle of people they can sustain meaningful connections with, and often leaving them with few but deeply significant friendships. Empaths are painfully aware of judgment, and not just the obvious kind. They notice subtle shifts in tone, body language, or facial expressions that signal disapproval long before anyone says a word. This heightened sensitivity makes them exceptionally empathetic, but it also puts them on constant alert in social situations. Every comment, every glance, every reaction can feel magnified, as if the world is scrutinizing them under a microscope. Over time, this creates a protective instinct. They become cautious about who they let in and how much of themselves they reveal. Even well-meaning friends can inadvertently trigger anxiety or self-doubt, because empaths pick up on micro-criticisms that most people wouldn't even notice. This hyper-awareness often leads them to retreat from relationships that feel risky or emotionally unsafe. It's not that they don't want connection, it's that the potential cost of being misunderstood or judged feels too high. They are wired to seek authenticity and safety, so they'll naturally distance themselves from people who make them feel exposed or vulnerable. In essence, their sensitivity to judgment acts as both a shield and a barrier. It protects their inner world, but also keeps the social circle small. The fewer people they allow in, the less likely they are to experience the sting of misunderstanding or rejection. While others may see this as isolation, for the empath, it's survival, a careful balancing act between maintaining emotional safety and satisfying the deep, inherent need for connection. This sensitivity to judgment is a key reason why empaths often end up with few friends, yet those relationships they do cultivate are meaningful and profound. Empaths have an unwavering need for authenticity, and it shapes the way they interact with the world. They can sense when someone is being insincere, when words are empty, or when actions don't match feelings. Small lies, hidden agendas, or shallow conversations feel like loud alarms to them, and it's exhausting to navigate relationships where pretenses are the norm. Because of this, empaths are naturally selective about the people they let into their lives. They don't crave a large group of acquaintances. They crave real connection, the kind that resonates with honesty and mutual understanding. This need for authenticity often sets them apart in social settings where casual, small talk, or superficial bonds dominate. While others may be comfortable blending in or maintaining surface-level friendships, empaths struggle to engage in anything that feels fake or performative. Over time, this insistence on realness filters out a lot of potential friends. They aren't rejecting people out of pride or arrogance. They're protecting their emotional energy. Each interaction with someone who is inauthentic drains them, leaving them vulnerable to burnout or emotional fatigue. This doesn't mean they are cold or detached. In fact, they are deeply caring and loyal to those who pass this invisible authenticity test. But the combination of empathy and this high standard naturally limits their social circle. The friendships they do form are not casual. They are intentional, meaningful, and often lifelong. Their insistence on authenticity, while protective, explains why empaths frequently walk through life with few companions. Yet the bonds they do have are profoundly rich and deeply rewarding. Empaths have a natural tendency to overgive, and it's one of the reasons they often find themselves with few friends. When they care, they give fully, time, energy, attention, and emotional support without keeping score. They notice when someone is struggling and instinctively step in to help, sometimes at the expense of their own needs. While generosity is admirable, it can create imbalance in relationships. Friends who don't reciprocate or fail to recognize the effort may unintentionally take advantage of an empath's giving nature. Over time, this pattern can lead to exhaustion, resentment, and even withdrawal from social interactions. Empaths quickly learn that not everyone is equipped to handle the depth of care they offer, so they start setting boundaries, often silently. They may decline invitations, reduce contact, or limit the amount of themselves they give to others, all to protect their emotional reserves. This overgiving isn't about seeking validation. It's a reflection of their innate compassion. Yet, it also acts as a filter, keeping casual or superficial friends at bay and leaving only those who truly value and respect them. The relationships that remain are often rare and deeply significant, but the process of finding these meaningful connections can feel lonely. For empaths, overgiving is a double-edged sword. It allows them to connect profoundly with a few people while naturally narrowing their social circle, making solitude not just a choice, but often a necessary space to recharge and preserve their emotional well-being. Empaths carry a profound fear of being misunderstood, and it's a fear that shapes nearly every interaction they have. Their emotions run deep, and their perception of the world is rich and nuanced, but that depth can be intimidating or confusing to others. When they share their feelings or insights, people may react with impatience, dismissal, or even judgment, leaving the empath feeling exposed and vulnerable. This fear isn't unfounded. Empaths often experience situations where their intentions are misread or their sensitivity is seen as overreaction. As a result, they become cautious about who they open up to and how much of themselves they reveal. Small talk or casual interactions often feel hollow or risky because there's no guarantee that the other person will understand the weight of their emotions. Over time, this fear builds walls, prompting empaths to retreat into themselves and limit their social exposure. It's not that they dislike people, it's that being misunderstood carries emotional consequences that feel too heavy to bear repeatedly. This instinctive withdrawal keeps their circle small, but it also protects their mental and emotional health. By curating relationships carefully, empaths reduce the risk of disappointment and hurt. While outsiders may see this as loneliness or aloofness, For the empath, it's a survival mechanism, a way to preserve their inner world and ensure that the connections they do have are meaningful, supportive, and truly understanding. The fear of being misunderstood is not a flaw, it's a form of wisdom that guides them toward relationships that actually matter. Empaths have a natural preference for solitude, and it's not because they dislike people. It's because social interaction can be deeply draining. Unlike most, they don't just experience a conversation. They feel every underlying emotion, every tension, every unspoken worry in the room. Even happy gatherings can leave them exhausted because they're absorbing so much energy from others. To maintain balance and preserve their emotional health, empaths often retreat into periods of quiet and reflection. This isn't avoidance or social rejection, it's self-care. Alone, they can process their feelings, recharge their energy, and make sense of the emotional layers they've experienced. It's in these moments of solitude that they regain clarity and strength, preparing themselves to re-engage with the world in a meaningful way. Because of this need to recharge, empaths may limit the number of friends they keep close, or decline social invitations more often than others, and that naturally results in a smaller social circle. Their relationships aren't casual, they're deliberate. They invest in people who are worth the emotional expenditure, while keeping interactions with others minimal. Solitude allows them to maintain this balance, preventing emotional burnout and protecting their sensitivity. While society often frames being alone as lonely or undesirable, for empaths, solitude is a tool, a sanctuary that ensures they remain emotionally healthy and available for the few meaningful relationships they do have. This preference for quiet and reflection explains why empaths often walk through life with few companions, but those they do have are cherished deeply. Empaths have an uncanny ability to sense toxic people, and it's a skill that both protects them and limits their friendships. They can detect dishonesty, manipulation, or hidden agendas almost instinctively, often before anyone else notices. This intuition allows them to avoid relationships that could harm them emotionally, but it also means they are quick to distance themselves from people who trigger discomfort or unease. While others might give second chances or tolerate questionable behavior, empaths rarely waste energy on connections that feel unsafe. They can feel the subtle shifts in energy, the hidden resentment, or the unspoken motives, and their instincts push them to step back, sometimes abruptly. This filtering process keeps their circle small, but it also ensures that the relationships they do maintain are genuine, supportive, and nurturing. Empaths are not indifferent. They simply recognize that their emotional well-being depends on surrounding themselves with people who uplift rather than drain them. This awareness can be isolating, especially in environments where superficial or self-serving behavior is common. But it's also a protective mechanism. By quickly identifying and avoiding toxic influences, empaths preserve their energy, maintain their integrity, and create space for meaningful connections. While outsiders might see this as rejection or social withdrawal, for the empath, it's a conscious choice, a commitment to their own emotional health, and a way to ensure that the friendships they do cultivate are worth the depth of care they naturally give. Their ability to sense toxicity is a gift that keeps their inner world safe, even if it keeps their social circles small. Empaths live in a deeply internal world, and this introspection shapes how they relate to others. They spend a lot of time reflecting on their thoughts, emotions, and experiences, seeking understanding and personal growth. This inner focus allows them to navigate life with insight and self-awareness, but it also limits the energy and attention they can devote to casual social interactions. Unlike people who thrive on frequent social engagement, empaths often find superficial connections draining or unsatisfying. They prefer meaningful conversations that touch on real emotions, ideas, and experiences, and anything less can feel hollow or exhausting. Their rich inner life means they may appear quiet or reserved, not because they lack interest, but because they are processing the world internally and carefully choosing how to interact. This introspection can create a natural barrier to forming large social circles, as they are selective about who they let into their deeper world. Solitude, reflection, and personal growth are not just preferences, they are essential for their emotional survival. The friendships they maintain are intentional, chosen carefully to ensure mutual respect, understanding, and depth. While outsiders might mistake this for aloofness or social withdrawal, for empaths, it is a conscious strategy to preserve energy and maintain authenticity. Their internal world is a sanctuary, a place where they can recharge, understand themselves, and engage with the world from a place of clarity. It is this profound introspection, combined with the other traits we've discussed, that explains why empaths often have few friends, but experience those relationships with extraordinary depth and significance. Here's the reality. Being an empath in a world that often values quantity over quality in friendships is challenging, but it's not a flaw, it's a gift. The traits we've discussed, the way you absorb emotions, your sensitivity to judgment, your insistence on authenticity, your tendency to overgive, your fear of being misunderstood, your need for solitude, your ability to sense toxicity, and your rich internal world, they aren't weaknesses. They are the very things that make you extraordinary. Yes, they mean you may have fewer friends than others, but the connections you do cultivate are meaningful, real, and life-changing. It's easy to look around and feel isolated, to measure yourself against people with large social circles, but that's a trap. True connection isn't about numbers, it's about depth, trust, and mutual care. Empaths are wired to see beneath the surface, to feel fully, and to give generously, and the people who are worthy of your friendship will recognize that and honor it. Your limited circle isn't a limitation, it's protection, it's intentionality, it's self-respect. So if you find yourself walking through life with just a few friends, or sometimes none at all, don't despair. Value the relationships you have, embrace your emotional depth, and give yourself permission to recharge and care for your own heart. Because in the end, empaths aren't meant to blend into crowds. They're meant to touch lives profoundly, even if it's just a few, and that is more than enough.